Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Not Your Average Bucket List by Only in Your State. I'm here with my co host Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Marissa.
So, we are officially knee deep in season 4, and
hmm
uh, this is an all new season that we're doing. We're pivoting from our small town getaways and our local lore and legends, and we're taking a deep dive on exciting, existing, only in your state content. How are you feeling so far about this season?
I love it. I love that we're not really bracketed into any one theme, and we're going to cover a lot of Look, we might talk about some small towns, we might talk about some lore, but it gives us the opportunity to really tell people what we're passionate about, and that's travel in the U.S. and discovering new places. So
Yeah.
I love it.
Very well put. Because that is the crux of Only in Your State. And what we do at Only in Your State is promoting local travel, especially. And so, in this episode in particular, we are going to be discussing an article called The Beloved Hole in the Wall That Serves Arguably the Best Mexican Food in Southern California.
Those are big words.
What a big claim.
Yeah.
First and
Yeah.
foremost, like, let's discuss best Mexican food in Southern California.
Yeah.
Yowza. And so yeah, we're gonna be on the West Coast for this episode, specifically talking about this restaurant, Don Nacho's Cafe in Solvang, California.
hmm
So Solvang, if you don't know anything about Solvang as a listener, you probably are thinking, what the heck is a traditional Mexican restaurant doing in the Danish capital of America? Which
First of all, yeah, I love that this has layers. Not only are we making a big claim about the best Mexican food in California or Southern California, but it's also in the Danish capital, which I did not know existed.
yeah,
And it is, I love it. Layers on layers. I'm ready for it.
yeah, like a lot of we're just going big or going
Yep.
home and hanging up our microphones, right? So yeah, so before we dive into Don Nacho's Cafe, we're going to talk a little bit about Solvang first and foremost because feel like you can't really talk about this Mexican restaurant without first discussing the Danish capital of America.
Yes, absolutely. And Solvang is in SoCal's Santa Ynez Valley, and it is known obviously for like the Danish architecture, the wineries, and yeah, being the Danish capital of America. It's about 45 minutes northwest of Santa Barbara, about. So just to give you context, and what I thought was interesting was like going back in the history of Solvang and saying like, okay, the in 1804, this mission Santa Ynez was founded in the present day city of Solvang. And then they began to, in like 1912, 1911, begin to construct like irrigation systems and farms. And then it seems like that's when about the Danish settlers in like 1911 started to go out west and really embrace the city. And Solvang means sunny field in Danish.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that early 1900s this group of Danish educators just wanted to have a Danish community in the United
Yeah.
States. And I feel like that's so cool. I always love stories like that where you still have these lasting communities that are
Yep.
so like deeply enriched by culture and community, and it's just like it just kind of lasts hundreds of years
hmm
because you don't even have to, like, now Solvang is a bit more touristy, but there's still so many cultural aspects that are drawing people to it,
Yeah.
which is why I think it's lasted as long as it has and is still like a great weekend getaway spot.
Yeah. And we've covered it a few times on Only in Your State itself, this small town. And one of the best titles that I thought that really encapsulate the feeling is like it was about whenever you enter this small town in California, you feel like you're in Europe. Like the
Mhm.
architecture, the streets, the squares, everything looks like, yeah, like you're in Denmark, which is amazing.
Yeah, it is cool because really, where else in the US do you have places that have windmills, just like chilling, and cobblestone streets? That's
Yeah.
always like something. I don't know why it's stuck with me my whole childhood, reading stories maybe, or I don't know. I was just like, why don't we have more cobblestone streets in the US? And this is a place that does.
And then
So
you grew up and you're like, oh, I mean, at least for Ohioans, I'm like, oh, with the freezing and the thawing, like even the brick paved roads, like they're out of here
yeah,
because it's impossible to keep up, but not in SoCal, at least.
yeah. Yeah. So I remember a long time ago, a good friend of mine was in Solvang and just randomly posting pictures on Instagram. And I was like, man, where is this place? Like, she has to be somewhere in Europe. And then, lo and
Yeah.
behold, because she lives in outside of LA. Um, and then, so yeah, I'm like, Solvang, what a cool place. It kind of reminds me of Helen, Georgia, which I've written about a bunch of times,
Mm-hmm.
state. Um, and now it has a more, I would say, touristy appeal to it, but you could still
Yeah.
grab like authentic Danish pastries and
Yep.
æbleskiver, which are round pancake-like pastries.
They look so delicious. Yeah, Abel skewer, and also, let's just say Danish royalty have visited the town multiple times. Like, so it's not just like, oh no, like everyone thinks that they're, this is the capital. It is like in the like,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
yeah. Yeah, and so what was really cool about this, so for anybody that's just tuning in for the first time, for this season, we are looking to our Facebook groups to kind of get some
Mhm.
feedback from our listeners and our followers. So this week we posted on Only in Southern California, our Facebook page, which we will include in the show notes if you want to join and check it out. It's a great group. And basically, we asked our followers there if they've ever been to Solvang, and there was a lot of really great feedback from people.
Oh my gosh, I loved it. And just like going through, so even as something as simple as like, so Kimberly and a lot of others said like, this is a great place to take with side trips to Los Olivos and Santa Ynez and make a big road trip out of it. And that was like feedback we
Yes.
got consistently. I'm like, wow, that's, yeah, perfect.
Yes.
And then other ones, a lot of people mentioned the able skewers. Like these pancakes are to die for. You need them. What are some things that jumped out at you?
So, yeah, I did love that a lot of people were saying take a road trip to
Yep.
go like wine tasting in
Yeah. Mhm.
the towns nearby. Um, Michelle Jones said visit Quicksilver Ranch to see miniature horses. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, you got me.
Check.
Yeah.
And then Jason Vega said Paula's Pancake House. Actually, there was a lot of people that said Paula's Pancake House.
Yeah,
It's like a,
Paula's
yeah,
definitely on the list.
love a good breakfast spot.
Also there is a Hans Christian Andersen library that,
Yes.
yeah, a few people called out, which is really
Right.
cool. Like they're committing to the bit. It's not a
Yeah.
bit. It's not a bit, but they're committing.
Yeah, and then Lisa Hanley said a high roller tiki lounge, which
Mhm.
is like an after hours spot. And then a lot of people also said to visit during Christmas because
Yeah,
apparently
I
this
saw
town,
that.
yeah, turns into like a wonderland, which I feel like is really cool. And Jennifer Combs said go to Jewel Huss, which is an all year Christmas store, open all year
Mm.
long.
Yeah, and so one final thing, Trisha and a few others said 4th of July fireworks show at the Mission. Like,
Mhm.
I saw that shout out. So if you're not going in December, go for, like, the 4th of July celebrations in the
Yeah.
summer.
Very cool that I you can go any season. This kind of reminds me of just when we talked about our small town getaway
Mhm.
season and we did our perfect day in.
Yep.
Um, I love these recommendations, and I love how a lot of people commented on the post in a very nostalgic way, saying, I
Yeah.
used to go here as a kid, and now I take my kids,
Mhm.
or I remember I was here. And like, I love that just post on Facebook brought back memories for people, like that,
Yeah.
like, made me just really happy overall.
Yeah, and the fact that, it's not just the architecture or the restaurants or whatever, like, there are windmills, there are, like, a giant red clog, or there is, the Little Mermaid fountain, a tower, the round tower, like, there are so many things to see when you're in the town that, in addition to, like, the shopping, eating, wine sampling, there's even there's a museum there, the Elverhøy Museum that is like Danish history and art, which is
Cool.
really cool.
That's
So, yeah, you can like learn a little bit too while you're there. While
yeah.
you're there.
Yeah, I feel like that's always what you and I that's like our first go-to that we talk about going someplace new is learning the history first. Learning
Yes.
how it came to be, and
Yep.
then appreciating all the things that come after. But in this
Yeah.
case, Solvang has a really unique history and something that should be celebrated, not just by visiting the businesses, but maybe, learning a little bit about the town before you go.
Mhm. Absolutely. There's a lot of history here between the mission, the churches, the multiple museums like the Hans Christian Andersen and the Amber Museum and some of the other stuff there too. So, but yeah, it's great to get outside and really enjoy all of the events that are going to be going on there because there actually are a lot. So, in addition to the Christmas, the July, I think there's also Danish days in September.
Hmm,
And I think a lot going on in October and December as well, but the Danish days looked interesting.
very cool.
Yeah.
And so obviously you're going to get a lot of Danish food when you're there. Pastries, people talk about the baked goods,
Mhm.
breakfast stuff, but it's not just Danish food as we now know,
Oh, no.
because Don Nacho's restaurant. This is a beloved restaurant in Solvang that serves traditional Mexican fare.
Mhm.
And one of our more popular articles on Only in Your State.
Yeah, and let's say that I know, like we said, it's a big claim to say, like, this is the best, like, Mexican food or Tex-Mex food in the Southwest and things like that, but it really does ring true for this restaurant because one, not only are there just, like, rave reviews, the food looks amazing, it's one of our most popular articles, but when you see it, this is what got me. It's in this little alleyway off of what is it? Jensen's Copenhagen Square. And it looks like has all the architecture and there's just a tiny little door that is Don Nachos. And I feel like if you just didn't know it was there, your eyes would just skip over it. But it has like the most amazing food and it's just tucked away in this little alleyway.
Yeah, I love places like that that are kind of secret, hidden,
Oh,
word of mouth. Because look,
yeah.
if I'm going to Solving, I'm probably not like gonna immediately be like, oh, I want Mexican food. For me,
Wait, what? You wouldn't?
bring on the sushi. No, but I probably would be, like, hey, how can I immerse myself in this
Right,
place?
absolutely.
But then after seeing all of these reviews and how people love that, especially people in California who I feel
Yeah.
like know their tacos, they
High
know their
standards.
burritos, yes,
Yeah.
and it's highly reviewed, and it's kind of like, man, you have to try it when you're there because
Yeah. And I
yeah,
feel like most people that I saw in the reviews, so I was just like scrolling through different review sites, a lot of them were saying like, "We stumbled upon this, just
yes,
so happened to see it. We weren't sure if it was a like it's one of those things that it's a true hidden gem." I mean,
yeah,
obviously we're talking about it now and it's just worth going to. And I feel like all these people were so surprised that, the value for the money, the food, the menu, everyone is just, really pleased with their experience, which is great.
yeah. Yes, and I feel like as Americans, when we think of Mexican food, it's a lot of, in my opinion, cheese, guacamole, store-bought flour tortillas, sour
Right.
cream, like kind of just this
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Americanized food. But when you think of more classic Mexican tacos, like kind of what Don Nachos prepares, it doesn't have all of that. It's more classic traditional, focusing on handmade tortillas, usually corn,
Yep.
emphasis on fresh meats, al pastor, asada, carnitas, barbacoa,
Yeah.
um, and then simple toppings, fresh tomatillo, chopped onion, cilantro, and that's it. It's not all frills and, you know,
No, I was looking at the menu and to your point, yeah, there's a lot of copy and paste Americanized Mexican food and, things related to it, but when I was looking at their menu, like the carne asada tacos, all of their tortas, which is, by the way, simple sandwiches that are kind of like in this press, like, was it bolillo bread? I forget what it's exactly called, but it's just like I'm a sandwich person, you're a sandwich person, like, gotta respect it. But then also they serve pupusas, which if you haven't had that, that's like a thick tortilla with meat and have, like, pickled veg and cabbage on it and with rice and beans, like, they have so much good stuff that, maybe you haven't seen on your, like, standard copy and paste Americanized menu. So, yeah,
yeah,
definitely worth checking out.
yes. And as far as so our new segment, let's say for this season, we're gonna do Google local tips and tricks about
Mm,
Don Nachos
mhm.
in particular. And so it's basically going to be a lot of local suggestions, really great feedback, because Don Nachos is very well reviewed, I would
Yeah.
say, on Google. And someone even said the owner is serving the food himself. which you know it
It's
has to be
wild.
at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so some people were saying always get the chips and salsa because the chips are made fresh, the salsa is made fresh, none of this jarred, canned, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you mentioned too, they were saying very reasonable prices and very generous serving sizes.
Yeah.
So you're definitely getting your bang for your buck. And then almost all of the reviews mentioned that the service here is stellar and a huge reason why people would come back.
Yeah.
Not just the food, but they said the service is like hands down one of the best aspects of this restaurant.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, especially when you say, like, the owner is, like, cooking and serving food and the service is so great, like, that's stunning to me that you can be having so many plates up in the air and doing such a challenging job, like, especially, like, in the food industry, like, it's not always guaranteed, and to just be able to give that kind of level of customer experience, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Absolutely epic.
yeah, yeah. So I'm adding Solvang to my list. I know we say we say that every episode, and it's gonna start sounding redundant, especially if I'm not traveling yet. But I don't know about you, but Solvang is a must for me, I think.
100%. Honestly, I wanna take a trip, maybe not even a trip, but, like, knock off the list of a bunch of, just culture-rich towns, especially, like, certain populations, like the Danish population here in Solvang and, you know, um, like Holland, Michigan, and all these other places that I feel like are just, like, really great spots to stop by.
Do you have any? Are there any places in Ohio that are like this kind of,
Mhm.
culturally
Well,
specific?
so we get a lot of, like, Amish and Pennsylvania Dutch, and so there's, you know, um, so, like, Sugar Creek, New Berlin, places like that with heavy, like, Bavarian, German sort of influence, there's a lot of those. And then up towards Cleveland, there's also a lot of, still German, Dutch, and then also, Polish too, like,
Mhm.
big pierogi presence in Cleveland, so
I love pierogies. So good.
whenever the local team was going the baseball team in Cleveland was going through, renaming, they're now the Guardians, I wanted someone to write in, like, the Cleveland pierogies, like, that would that would be amazing.
Yum and yes.
Mhm, mhm.
Love that. All right, so that kind of wraps up our Solvang and Don Nachos episode. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
I don't think so. Yeah, find the alley in Copenhagen Square, walk into Don Nachos. I think that they were open 7 days a week. They cut down a little bit during the pandemic, but I think they're back up to 7 days, and yeah, try all the food. Get those, hold on, I already lost it, the pancakes, the,
Oh
Abel
yeah,
skewers?
yeah,
Yeah.
Able Skeever.
Get
Yeah,
some of those, so
definitely.
that's it.
And so for anybody that wants to follow along this season, head to our Only in Your State Facebook pages. We have a dedicated page for every state, and we're going to be covering places in this season from Florida, Ohio, Indiana, Alaska, Texas, you name it. So keep an eye out for that if you want to participate in our posts and then maybe have a chance to be on the podcast giving your recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely.